Excellent. So, calls the Cronenberg channel. We've done The Fly. We've done Dead Ringers.
You've done The Fly.
I've done The Fly. I've done Dead Ringers.
I've listened attentively.
Yes. We were going to do Crash, which you've seen.
I have seen Crash.
Yes, and now I've seen David Cronenberg's bizarre Naked Lunch.
Oh.
Naked Lunch. So, Naked Lunch is an adaptation of William Burroughs' 60s classic novel, Naked Lunch.
Oh.
Naked Lunch is one of the most sort of controversial novels of all time.
Okay.
It is a bizarre sort of phantasmagorium of sort of strange events happened to William Burroughs. William Burroughs was like a heroin addict. He wasn't much of a writer. I've read some of his work. I've read The Ticket That Exploded and a couple other ones. I've not read Naked Lunch, but it's sort of his classic sort of one. It's more known for its groundbreaking qualities than actually any kind of literary qualities that it has.
Okay.
It broke a lot of boundaries for the portrayal of drugs and sex and things in books. A lot of people wanted it banned because it was just so out there. William Burroughs was also a homosexual, which fed into a lot of his work. And it's basically one of them books where at the time it caused a massive, massive ruckus because of how extreme it was. Now it's quite tame. I've read bits of it, I have it at home, but I've never read the whole thing. It's about a writer who has to go into the interzone and he takes a lot of drugs. It sounds incomprehensible. I have a mate who has read it who says that the plot is basically impossible to describe.
Okay. So
David Cronenberg had to adapt this basically unadaptable novel. So what he decided to do, which the film does, is it's all about William Burroughs' life as well as about his novel Naked Lunch, and it takes bits and pieces from every novel that he did. So William Tell is a writer and also a bug exterminator.
Okay.
He becomes addicted to, and this is me trying to explain the plot, it's very, very difficult, which you'll probably see in a moment. He becomes addicted to his extermination spray, and so does his wife. He then shoots his wife in the head when they play a game called William Tell, where you put an apple on your head and try and shoot it off. After he's killed his wife, a bug that is inside his typewriter assigns him a mission to go to Interzone, where Ian Holmes' character hires him to do something and gives him a new typewriter which has a new bug in there. And Ian Holmes' wife looks just like William Tell's wife, and he's growing slowly and slowly more addicted to magwumpgism. Magwumps are what the typewriter's head is, and maybe all of it's in his head after he killed his wife, or maybe it's all real, and it's also about the creative process, and also about being a repressed homosexual. And Interzone is a bit like Tangiers. Basically, the plot is really difficult to describe.
Yes, sounds it.
Yes. It's more an attempt to capture some of the aspects of the sort of counterculture, like Jack Kerouac and you know those 50s sort of Allen Ginsberg that kind of troupe of writers,
Beat poets.
Yes. Like William Burroughs had a technique of writing where he would write lots and lots and lots and lots of pages of nonsense. Then he would cut them up and assemble them into sort of a more coherent thing. Or maybe it wasn't coherent, but that was the style he did. He'd just cut them up. A bit like David Bowie with the Ziggy Stardust lyrics. And that sort of fed into Naked Lunch, which is, again, seen as a classic or a pile of trash, depending on your point of view. The film is much more conventional than the book, from what I've heard. You could sort of follow the story.
Okay.
A little bit. It sort of makes sense at the time when you're watching it. But it's a very weird film.
Sounds a weird film.
It is.
Is it any good? That's. I mean, with these kind of films, it's kind of hard to work out whether it's good or not.
Sort of, but not really.
Okay.
The main issue with it is that as a filmmaker, David Cronenberg is famous for sort of being cold and detached.
Yeah.
And making... It's really weird. His films don't sort of feel like films because he does a lot of like still shots that counteract each other rather than any kind of motion. Like if you watch his films, a lot of them have sort of these sort of painterly sort of compositions, but they don't actually seem to have any kind of fluidity to them.
Okay.
And like Naked Lunch, I think would have been better served with a filmmaker with a bit more life. Because like beat poetry is all known for, you know, like oh yeah, it's all improvised and like that kind of shit. Man, yeah.
And then like that purple tinted glasses on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all like
Berets.
that. Yeah, and his kind of style, William Burroughs, of cutting stuff up and making it into like a whole thing, like a big mess that sort of made sense because of the sort of style of reading it, doesn't really suit a filmmaker who sort of makes everything very like obsessively.
Yeah.
This film, I think, would have been better served with a filmmaker with a bit more life, a bit more, you know, like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of
early Jean-Luc Godard.
Godard, or
Yes.
Altman, or Truffaut, or, you know, like a crazy filmmaker who would have taken it in sort of a crazy direction. To give it a bit more, like, spine than the novel, it's more about William Burroughs as a person.
Okay.
Like, he actually did kill his wife.
Oh.
But he got away with it because he was in Mexico.
Oh, okay.
It's one of them really. Apparently, he shot his wife in Mexico when they were playing a game of William Tell. He shot her in the face. But because he was in Mexico, he only had to serve, I think, a month in prison.
Okay.
And then he managed to like just get away with it. And there's some of that sort of stuff in Naked Lunch as well. Like William Tell, who's played by RoboCop's Peter Weller, as the back of the box says. There's a really great scene in it where it's really bizarre and really disturbing. He goes to a guy's house to get his typewriter back because his typewriter gets stolen. All the typewriters are anthropomorphized, so they have faces and talk to him.
Okay.
It's sort of about the creative process.
When was it made?
1992.
Okay.
It's just like he talks to his typewriter and he gets stolen, and he goes to get his typewriter back, but he has sort of like a boyfriend, and he goes first, and when he goes to take it, his boyfriend is sort of being raped by this huge insect.
Okay.
It's really weird. Like he just walks in, and then there's like this insect pushing his like tentacles in this guy's head. Oh, it's really disturbing, but it actually works because it's done in a sort of Cronenberg style of like the guy walks in and then it's just a still shot of this horrible insect killing this guy. That works, but it's a really weird film because it's really ambitious, but it doesn't work at all.
No, okay.
Another great score by Howard Shore.
Howard Shore, yeah.
Lord of the Rings, man.
Yeah.
It's sort of a lot of jazzy sort of like saxophone riffs and really menacing stuff. That's great, but the whole film never really comes together as a whole. Okay. It's a really lifeless, which is not what you want from an adaptation of sort of one of the great beat novels of the sort of like 50s, 60s.
That's a bit more lively.
Something a bit lively that actually captured that sort of era. Like, I'm trying to think of other. It's a weird era, I think, sort of the beat, because it's not really doesn't seem to be like captured on film a lot.
No.
Like that film, have you seen I'm Not There?
Yeah.
That's got Allen Ginsberg in.
Yeah.
And I think something like that, where it's like 6 different stories and there's a bit more life to it and different sort of techniques, would have been well served for Naked Lunch. There was no real way you could do a straight adaptation of it, because it is so out there and so weird and it's so full of sort of transgressions.
Yeah.
It just goes everywhere. So there's no real way to do a straight adaptation of just novel to film, which makes the film just even more polarised in the way it's sort of about William Burroughs and about the creative process. It got really mixed reviews when it came out in August, and I actually agree with a lot of the reviews then. It has a lot of merit to it as like being an ambitious work and it's well filmed, but there's no real reason to care about anything that's on screen.
Yeah.
Like when we were talking about The Fly, and when I was talking about The Fly and Dead Ringers, like The Fly, it's about a guy who goes too far in the name of science and destroys himself. That's something that's resonant that people can like relate to.
Yeah.
Dead Ringers, it's all about identity and not feeling like you have a purpose in things because you're identified by other things. Anyone can relate to that. I don't think people can relate to being addicted to magwumpism and murdering their wife as much.
It sounds sort of, we were talking about really self-consciously arty things. We were talking about the creative process, man. They'll never understand it, man.
Yeah.
Because we're artists. Does it fall into that a bit?
Sort of, but not really.
Okay.
William Boyers as a person, I think, does. And the film sort of, just because it's about that, sort of does.
Okay.
But in a way, not really, because, again, the film was just too dry to really, because, like, a lot of films like that would have sort of, like, more energetic camera work.
Well, like Birdman.
Like Birdman, yeah. Like that film, I've not seen it, but it is all, like,
it's all
energetic.
It's masked as, like, one take, so you get in the energy of, like, these actors all working together, like, you know, oh, we're going to do this, go to that, oh, we're around the corner here, but oh, he's doing this thing, and you get a real buzz from what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, a bit more lively, bit beat,
yeah.
Bit beat.
But this sort of feels like if someone who was like a scientist who had no creativity had read the book and then sort of taken it apart and built it back up again.
Okay. So
it sort of loses a lot of what the book is. But it's such a weird film. Like, there's a really weird bit and all, like at the beginning where he gets arrested for huffing the extermination stuff. And then the police just trap him with this bug who, like, he looks like a ladybird, and he opens his wings and then it's like a typewriter.
Okay.
And then he crushes it with his shoe. That's the kind of film it is. Like, every scene is sort of really weird, but it's all directed in that sort of flat Cronenberg style. There is actually one really good point about it, which is that Roy Scheider, isn't it? You know, from
Jaws.
From Jaws,
yeah.
He's really great in it because he sort of embraces how weird it is.
Okay.
And he gives a big performance.
Oh,
he talks in that kind of way, and yeah.
That's what you want, yeah.
The weirdest part of it is Peter Weller's performance.
Peter Weller.
Like, he plays a drug addict and, like, a repressed homosexual and, like, this sort of beat novelist. And he just acts like an insurance salesman.
Okay.
Like, every scene, like, strange things happen and he just doesn't react at all.
Okay.
There's one where the typewriter starts talking to him and he lights a cigarette and goes, "So what have you got to say?" Like, he just never reacts to anything. It's obviously intentional.
Yeah.
Because he's meant to be playing someone who sort of is so far gone that nothing really matters. But it doesn't really mean that the audience can really care about anything that happens.
Yeah.
There's some bits where he emotes. There's a really sort of strange bit where he's like, basically, like, they have all the stuff in Interzone, which is like Tangier, and then, like, his mates find him and he's like a tramp just laid on the floor, and it's like, maybe this is it's one of them films where, like, maybe it's all in his head.
Oh.
Maybe he killed his wife and Interzone's in his head and he's using it to escape, or maybe not.
Oh.
You know those kind of films.
Yeah, I know those kind of films.
Try and be ambiguous. But most of it is set in Interzone, so it wouldn't really make any sense if it wasn't real.
Yes.
But then it might not be, because he might have killed his wife, and it's just a strange sort of film that tries to be ambiguous but isn't really.
Okay.
It is a failure and a mess. It doesn't seem to capture what the book is about, and it doesn't seem to work on its own, because you would have to know that William Burroughs killed his wife to get the same emotional reaction out of it, and to think like, oh, this is playing off of that. But if you know what it is and you've read the book, you won't have the same sort of reaction to it. 'Cause if you like the book, you won't really like the film, because it's not the... Well, you could like the film, obviously, but they're completely different, and I don't really know why he made this film, or what he was trying to do with the film. Like, Dead Ringers and The Fly and Crash and Eastern Promises and Videodrome, all the classic ones. Like, you can see what he was trying to do, and they work because of the flat style, and they have real things to say. Like, have you seen Videodrome?
Yeah.
It's like, it's a classic, isn't it? Because it's about the way we're becoming more and more technologically dependent. And it's like, James Woods in that plays like he's a horrible person, but you can feel for what he's doing, because it's like, what is happening to him is so visceral and, like, horrible that he's becoming less and less of himself. He's becoming more this sort of machine man. But anyone can sort of relate to that, especially now. That's one of them films that I think is dated better than when it came out, because now more and more of what we're doing is more technological, that we can relate to that more. But Naked Lunch, like, it's really hard to care about what's happening in the film.
Yeah.
I mean, even if like you had like a drug addiction, it sort of is so cold and so. And it feels like a lot of what people accuse Stanley Kubrick of being.
Oh.
But it feels sort of warranted in this case.
Okay.
I mean, I just can't even like fathom what David Cronenberg was trying to do with the film, because it's not a synthesis of him and William Burroughs. It feels like a David Cronenberg film, but one that doesn't have the best elements of a David Cronenberg film.
Yeah.
So Naked Lunch, I would say, is an ambitious failure. It has a really, really good ending, which spoiler alert, sort of, but not really, because it doesn't make any sense. So it doesn't. You know, when in films, it doesn't really matter if you spoil what happens. Yeah. But he is given a final assignment by his bug typewriter, where he has to recreate the sort of murder of his wife, and then he does it, and then he starts like crying, and they let him in, and it doesn't really make any logical sense, but it makes an emotional sense.
Okay, yeah.
Which would have been amazing if the rest of the film was like that, if it made no logical sense, but you could feel for what's happening. But the rest of the film doesn't, because it's so flat and there's such a remove from what's happening. Like, there's an early scene where his wife is having sex with his two friends, and all it is like a one shot of them on the couch, but that doesn't sort of capture the sort of like liveliness of beat at all, like, you know, the like sex and appeal of it and that kind of stuff. It just is a bit boring.
Okay.
And I can understand sort of what he was trying to go for, as like, to sort of how debilitating sort of drug addiction could be. So I can see how you could look at it like that. But the whole film is shot in this kind of sort of dry take. Maybe he was trying to show like what drug addiction does, how everything's so boring and mundane. But it just doesn't make a very good film, because the film is quite dull to watch, and I had to watch it in 2 parts. Like, I watched it and like I think I fell asleep an hour in, and then had to sort of watch it again. But I don't know whether I'd actually recommend the film to someone, because I think some people will really dig the film and think it's like a great masterpiece, and sort of, it's really weird because I can't understand who the target audience for this is. Because you know how there's them films where people say like, you know, oh, you got to be high to watch it.
Oh yeah.
But the film again is so cold and mechanical that I imagine you'd be bored if you were looking for sort of a rush film. So yeah, a very complicated, ambitious failure. But if you like David Cronenberg, I would advise watching it once, just to sort of see how it will make you have a great appreciation for The Fly and Dead Ringers and the other classic ones. So yes, out of 10, it's another question mark, because it's pretty much unrateable. There's a lot of stuff to recommend about it, but you never get that feeling of sort of being drawn into it or actually caring about what's happening on the screen. So yeah, question mark out of 10. Naked Lunch, if you like Cronenberg, watch it. If you want to see a William Burroughs adaptation, this is probably like the only one. I don't think any of his other work has been, or if it has, I've never heard of one. If I'm wrong, put it in the comments. But yeah, Naked Lunch, it's weird.